Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure about this. Anyway, Jessica, thank you so much for agreeing to do an interview. And yeah, as I said, I've only just got back in, so I've seen your comment underneath the Tuesday Newsday, which sounds fascinating, and that is all I know about you. But there is a wealth to know just from that one comment alone. Approaching the post-production stages of my honours thesis project, documentary covering topics in music cognition this coming January. So, I mean, the last thing, well, if you're doing a thesis, it may be preoccupying your mind solely, so you may feel that this is respite. But I want to know as much as you can feel able, if it's probably filling your cognition, to share with me, because I think that sounds incredible. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I guess like I'll start. I'm a radio, TV, film major and psychology major, double major up at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. So I'm doing my studies right now. I'll be graduating in the spring, and I am currently so I originally went to school with the intention of doing the radio, TV, film major because I've always had the interest in like media production, specifically music and like audio engineering and that stuff. So I went there to learn that. And then it turned out I had a psychology class with one of the professors there who was doing research in music cognition, and I ended up talking with him and getting sucked into the psychology department as well. And I've always like had this interest in kind of combining like interdisciplinary aspects of things, so like arts and science and arts and well like music and video, things like that, combining different arts. And so I had the idea to dive a little deeper into that research and come up with a thesis to present in the form of a documentary so that I could share what I was learning with other people in a more accessible way, and going through the whole exercise of trying to figure out how to take those scientific journals and peer reviewed research articles and everything and translate them into a way that can be presented to like the everyday person. So that's kind of my
Fascinating.
project.
Because of course, when you probably have, I don't know what I've seen recently, but when you do see these programs, or even on the radio, or even in an article actually about any of these really in-depth studies on any subject, frankly, but I suppose specifically on a scientific one. And then when you watch any good film or any good TV program or read any good article, it is really quite amazing how people manage to make it accessible, because
Exactly.
some of these subjects are really involved and they're really quite abstract. And actually the skill and the talent is to make it accessible, because presumably you want it to be, especially if you're making a documentary, you want it to be accessible to viewers, so that it doesn't have to be somebody that's marking your PhD or thesis that only them and the rest of the circle that have studied it can actually understand. You want it to be accessible to your target audience. So how have you gone about that process? Tell us. I mean, this sounds uh, music cognition in itself sounds like a massive subject. Presumably there are subsections of that. And so what specifically are you looking at in your thesis? And then also, how have you, well, probably two massive questions. And then how have you gone about the process of making that accessible?
Okay, yeah. So for my thesis, because it was very hard to choose like a specific like subtopic within music cognition to try and present on. So I actually am doing somewhat of like an overview of various important topics in there. One of the main
Important.
focuses is definitely on the relationship between language and music, because they're both very similar in how they're constructed. Like language is a form of communication, obviously, and it's built by taking letters to combine into words, and then words combined into phrases or sentences, and sentences combined into paragraphs. While music is like notes combined into chords, and then chords combined into phrases, and phrases combined into songs, into a composition with multiple movements. So there's a lot of similarities behind how they're structured in a way. And there's also a lot of research behind the fact that music has been around for so long, but without any sort of clear survival benefit. So humans have been interacting with music for forever and holding it as this important thing to themselves, but there isn't like a clear reason, like why are humans so drawn to music. And so the research I'm doing is like an overview of different basically topics explaining why they might be music might be psychologically important to humans. So with language and music, they're finding that there is some overlap between the systems within the brain that process both of those things. However, there was new research finding that musicians actually have like different patterns of brain activity while processing music. So there's some speculation that musicians might have the ability to develop some other type of brain system that non-musicians don't necessarily have access to. And so it's kind of distinguishing between, okay, like how is music processed? How is it different for someone that's an expert in music versus someone that casually listens to it, because we all interact with music. And so I'm kind of just doing an overview of why people are drawn to it, how it can be used in everyday life, and possibly some of the therapeutic like implications of music based off of the research that I'm coming up with.
Fabulous. And what do you believe some of the therapeutic benefits could be?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. There's actually been a few programs implementing music therapy for persons suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's been found that interaction with music therapy can help kind of bring these people back to themselves, like bring up new associative memories, maybe take them back to their childhood in some way. But there's actually, if you look online, there's some really interesting videos of patients who are interacting with music, and you'll see them before and after. And the effects are astounding because basically afterwards they can verbalize like what they were thinking about, what they're feeling and stuff, when potentially beforehand they had no access to that kind of information. They weren't able to recall memories or have any sort of verbalization of those.
That's fascinating that it could facilitate improved articulation of language, really being able, because often one of the things that can go or be severely impaired with Alzheimer's is language, is people's ability to speak and to make sense of what they're saying. So that sounds, and do you think that is related to what you were saying about this area of the, not particularly an area of the brain, but the way that musicians are using their brain, perhaps in and their relationship with music? Do you think there's some access, perhaps, that people with Alzheimer's may be tapping into?
Yeah, so I think that's like the speculation. Like we obviously we don't know enough, like the research is still very new, but I think that's what they're kind of getting at, is that, well, like speech therapy and language doesn't necessarily elicit these same responses, but with music it's doing different things. So like what in the brain is different about that situation? And that's one of the speculations, I believe, is that yeah, there's some other things going on in the brain when we're processing music compared to other stimuli.
And does that include using other parts of the brain?
Yes, yeah. So it's like, I mean, that gets really complicated to explain, like parts of the brain and stuff like that in different subsystems, but it's a lot with like the working memory model. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's like used to explain basically how we process everything, all the information coming at us. And right now it doesn't really account for this other like musical processing. So like the way that most psychologists like view their research is actually not accounting for everything that we know now. So there's progress that needs to be made. They need to incorporate this new information into their old models and stuff. So it's very much like a new kind of field of research, it seems like.
And presumably that's the area of research that you're looking at. And then how are you, well, or incorporating in your own research? And then how are you the second part of that original question was, how do you, what are you, because yeah, you began your is it a thesis? Do you say it's a postgrad qualification you're doing, or where are you?
I'm still in undergraduate.
Yeah, undergrad. So like thesis, thesis for your undergrad. So is that so yeah? How are you combining? How are you going about making that accessible? So what is it in the TV? Is it the documentary? Yeah, in the documentary format. What key elements of the documentary? How's that relationship? What are the essentials? I suppose it's a tip in documentary making, probably.
Yeah. So what I really tried to do is find people that I could talk to that would have insight, maybe not specifically related to the psychology, but they could give their experiences with music and kind of try to explain how they experience it. And then using those examples, I'm going to try to relate it back to the research. So maybe give some facts, give some of the new information that we're finding out, and then have these real world examples for people to look at and try to help explain those things. So that's kind of the approach I've been taking. I know there's other ways I can do it, but trying to get other people to help explain, and also using like visual graphics to kind of conceptualize things that are a little more abstract, like certain experiments and stuff that there's no clear like visual thing to put up on a screen. So I'll have to try and build graphics or effects or something to communicate that information.
And in terms of documentary style, are there any documentary makers that you are influenced by that are influencing how you're going about it?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't have any specifically in mind. I'm really interested in documentaries, and I've watched a lot just casually, like in my free time. So I have a lot to go off of that, but I haven't really dove into a specific filmmaker to be exact.
There has to be. I'm just kind of curious because did you say your first love, the first reason when you went to study was film, TV, and theatre, did you say?
And music.
And music. So were you majoring in music? Do you play?
I do. So that's another thing too. So I've always wanted to be very much a part of music in my professional life, but I've also had a strong interest kind of on like the behind the scenes side of things, how things are done, how they're made, how music is produced. And so with going into the radio TV film program, I was hoping to acquire a lot of skills in like audio engineering and stuff to try and, get behind the scenes, but also keep myself open to other opportunities like filming or radio, things like that.
Amazing. And what is it that you play, Jessica?
I started out playing piano, and I took lessons since the age of 5. Then I picked up drums and played that starting about 12. And then I've also dabbled in like guitar and bass, just teaching myself,
Oh, that's fantastic. So presumably with audio engineering, are you doing some audio engineering as well?
Yeah, I've been taking a lot of classes and had some projects kind of outside of that, just with friends. I have a lot of friends that make music and stuff, so just mixing little things for them. It's definitely like how I like to spend my time, and if I can make my career there, that's what I will do.
Oh, right. So would you do, I suppose, would you be more interested in the like engineering, like recording studio engineering or out of front house kind of engineering?
I'm definitely open to either. The recording studio is alluring to me for sure. I love recorded sound and just the perfection that you can get from spending so much time going over the same thing and editing and doing all the mixing and stuff. So like recorded sound definitely, but also, I mean, there's a true art to live sound and doing everything in the moment, like front of house and everything.
Oh, that's a story. It sounds like a very full undergraduate degree, Jessica. What are you doing? How many? So what are your modules? I mean, to be doing a documentary and also doing psychology, music, cognition, and also learning engineering, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds fascinating, but it's really comprehensive. I'm quite surprised that you've got time to actually to do it all. To do it all. So what is the so that's your thesis? I suppose it's combining both of them. Will you have to prepare any music, like, or you're specializing in the audio side? So will you have to for your finals? Will you have to will you be incorporating music or the engineering of the music or the production of the music anyway in your documentary as well? Is it using everything, or is that going to be a separate exam?
Yeah, so I'm planning on writing my own score for the documentary. So to fill any gaps in like the music that I need, I'm gonna be creating a composition for that. I've done that for another like a student film that we did on campus, done a film score, and I've also been interested in making like little blurbs of like production music for our like TV productions and stuff. So I try to get my music into like any project that I can, really.
I mean, it sounds like you don't actually need any, but well, the people that you're talking to, which would be very interesting and makes up the documentary, but it sounds like quite a lot of the rest of the things you've got covered yourself. That's pretty rare. It's pretty rare to be able to be an authority on the subject of the documentary, the making of the documentary, the music in the documentary. My goodness, that's quite that's impressive, really. So you said you've always played those several different instruments, and is the music part very much part of your background? You said the psychology is something that you came to when you actually got to university. So yeah, so what are your, if you tell us a bit about your background in music, and is your family in music, and what kind of music you're influenced by?
Okay, yeah. So growing up, I mean, music was always around in my house. My parents loved listening to music. They weren't necessarily musical themselves. They don't necessarily play an instrument, but they definitely encouraged my brother and I to pick up instruments and get involved in music however we could. And it was actually, I was lucky that my neighbor down the street is a piano teacher. So I started by just going to her house and taking piano lessons once a week and picked that up. And I got more and more interested just as I kept going. And by high school, I was lucky enough that within my school district, they actually had a performing arts charter school. So for high school, I went to a performing arts school studying percussion performance. And so
Oh,
I did a lot of music there. And I actually did a senior portfolio project coming out of high school, um, where I wrote and recorded a song and then created a virtual reality music video to go with it. Very much actually inspired by Duran Duran. I was at the time just like so deep in the marriage of music and video and just fascinated by that, which is basically what launched me to go towards university and pursue the majors that I have. And then I fell into the psychology thing. So it's always been very music focused up until this point. And now I'm kind of incorporating other things and branching out.
And so you say it was influenced by what was the video? What was it?
Yeah, so it's a video called People Change. It was just like a silly little love song that I wrote myself in my room. And then I actually got some help from the school. They were looking to buy like a little GoPro, like virtual reality camera to help teach at the school. And so they let me like pilot it and use it and learn how to make something with it. And so I made like this little video where um which the concept was actually kind of difficult to come up for how to translate just from a flat screen to virtual reality. And I decided to like go back and forth in time kind of. So there's black and white shots of back in time all around this little love song, and then like in the present, the conflict and stuff like that happening. So it's like kind of going back and forth, past and present, and taking you into these different like environments where you see relationship conflicts.
Sounds really interesting. And did you submit that for your when you had to apply for the unis? Did you have to submit a work, or was that more
Um,
based on your grades? Out of
that was
curiosity.
definitely more based on grades. I think I included it on a resume or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely wrote about it in my college essay. So
Uh-huh.
they
But that
something
was
about
one of your first, possibly not the first, but one of the first times that you really pulled everything to quite a few different aspects of your interests together, which is later you've expanded on with the psychology and the cognition. And so with that, I'm curious to, could ask you about the psychology as well, but I guess we're thinking about the creative side. But really, where do you see, are you in your second year, your final year? Are you still exploring? Where do you see it taking you? Did you say you want to do the audio, but but at the same time, you've got this whole other expertise of knowledge on cognition. Are you drawn to doing more with that? Where do you see yourself going? Or are you just exploring at the moment? Well, the
yeah.
thesis is the final year though, right? So,
Yeah. Yep. I'm
right.
graduating in the spring this year. So
Mm.
as of right now, my plan is I'm gonna keep I have a job at a record store up by school. So I'm gonna stick with that job, and that opportunity has provided just a great network of people that come in and out and work, other people that work there and customers and everything, of just people involved in the business, whether it be music or film. And so I'm hoping to kind of settle down there and start potentially a freelance career, like seeing what kind of avenues I can get involved in, different projects and people to talk to. And really my goal will be to focus more on music, but I know that I have more options after graduating with a degree in radio, TV, and film.
Well,
I have
yes, yeah, absolutely, because you've so when you so we've talked about the TV and you incorporating various different elements. What about the radio and well, the radio side of things as well? Do you specialize in the audio engineering around that as well, or other elements? How does
um
that work with your finals?
I definitely started out kind of on the radio side of things. So like my freshman and sophomore year, I was involved in the station on campus and stuff. I did like a little hosting spot with some jazz music that I was presenting. And then I served briefly as like the assistant music director, like reviewing music and songs for the station. And then after that, I was kind of just drawn more towards the production side of things, and television seemed a little more involved than the radio side was more like promotional with like getting out bands and stuff like that, whereas the TV was really creative, and that's what was I was drawn towards.
Hmm. So as you said, when you work in the record shop, but your instinct or what you feel when you graduate is that you do want to focus more on the music side. So when you say that, do you mean but the engineering of the music side rather than, because it's difficult to believe in some ways because you play so many instruments, and also the fact that you majored in percussion at one point, did you say in your when you're
In
at
high
high
school.
school, right? So
Yeah.
does that mean you said playing the drums or play percussion or with
Mm-hmm.
both?
Yeah, a little both. Like I would do drum set for like jazz band and stuff like that, or just when I was messing around on my own, and then more like orchestral percussion as needed for school.
So where do you get an outlet? Do you get to play now, drums and percussion?
it's it's definitely hard to find opportunities while I'm at school.
So you're
I don't have
focusing on
a
the
drum set
thesis
with
right now.
me. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
You're focusing on the thesis right now. You can't have,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. There's only so
Exactly. Yeah,
many
there's
hours
a
in the
lot
day.
on my plate. So I'm very excited to graduate. And I think I'm definitely planning on doing more of my own music and maybe getting out there doing some shows just in the local area and stuff to see how it goes. Um
I hope so because I suppose it's quite easy. I mean, that's one of the things that comes up in this group that it's understandable actually to feel, well, I need the security of a job and to not prioritize what you're really, really good at. I mean, it sounds like from what you've said that you're really good at quite, you didn't put it like this, but this is my deduction, that you're really good at several things, multi-instrumentalist and also specializing in psychology and film and TV. I mean, it's really wonderful to hear. It's fascinating, really, especially how you're combining it all with this documentary that you're making. It sounds really interesting. And I'd love to see a clip of it when I don't know how that will work when it's finished. But when you actually leave school, yeah, you're going to be in the record store. But what would you? It seems a shame, yeah, because you said you'd like to go onto the engineering side or but it seems a shame when you're so musical. Is that speak of a concern that you wouldn't be able to make enough of a living doing music? Is it or is it genuinely that's just where your interest has taken you and you really are leaning more towards I just find it curious when you say that because you're clearly so creative and musical, being, playing various different instruments.
um I think if I'm being 100% honest, I think that does come out of a sort of fear of not not being successful or not being good enough, or just a fear of failure in general. I mean, I'm still willing to try, but I remember like being within the context of like a performing arts charter school, you see a lot of other people that are very talented around you, and it can be hard to keep your confidence up in that kind of situation. So I mean, I'm definitely interested in the engineering aspect of things, but I saw it as more kind of like a technical avenue that I could get into as a career to
Right.
base off of music in a way. But like my dream would be to be a performing musician, yes.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, keep that dream alive. I mean, it's totally fair enough and you're not the only musician that has related work that is in the music in the music industry and whilst being a musician. So it's not a wholly unreasonable or unimaginable plan to do that. But I'm glad for you to be honest and to declare that, because that's what I deduce as I listen to you. I think I couldn't quite understand when you say all these things, but so it's interesting to hear your reasoning. And so so I really hope that you keep that once you finish you graduate, that you create enough time, and there will be enough time to make a plan around your music and to develop. So do you have other musicians that you're working with at the moment?
Um, Not currently on like a specific project or anything, but I'm good friends with a band out of the Oshkosh area named Shuby, and they've been doing some really cool stuff in the area with like some like hardcore like punk music and just getting out there and playing these energetic fun shows. So I've been like around that environment and I really like that. I hope to kind of use some of that energy in my work once I graduate.
Uh-huh. What kind of music do you are you drawn more towards punk then? What kind of music are you into?
I like all kinds of music. It's hard to pick sometimes, but I'm definitely into like 80s alternative and new wave music. So just like synth pop and like some weird electronic stuff and just the classics as well. Like Duran Duran, Tears for Fears, Depeche Mode. Those are my three faves.
Well, I mean, they're all really good. Tears for Fears is fantastic. Well, all of them. Of course,
Mhm.
I'm biased working with Duran Duran. What about the more recent music? What do you recommend that's out there at the moment that draws from those influences? I'm curious because sometimes when people are into music, they kind of assume that other people would have heard of it. So I always want to know what people are into. So are the bands that when you said, is it Shuby? Would you say that they draw from 80s, or is it, you said punk?
Yeah, they're a
But
little more like hardcore with like the punk side of things and also some I know they're really inspired by the OCs, the band, like psychedelic kind of hard rock stuff. So they like to meld a lot of different genres. I think as far as like current artists that go towards my avenue a little bit more, I know like Tame Impala is a big one with all their instrumentation and production stuff. Like that's very in line with what I like and appreciate. Also Churches, the band, as far with like synth pop, excellent stuff.
mm-hmm. Well,
And
that's new to me, so that's why I'm asking you, because it's great to know. It's great to know of these people, and I would be looking them up.
sounds great.
Hmm.
Let
And
me know.
so, yeah, so I hope you do get to do more music, because it clearly sounds like you've really got it in your bones, and also you are an accomplished multi instrumentalist. I don't suppose you have any do you have anything around at the moment, like a keyboard or like percussion?
I don't, unfortunately.
All
I'm
right, well,
just the
I'll let
holidays
you.
right now, so I'm a little disheveled.
Yeah, I'll let you off the hook. Since I interviewed, I don't know if you've seen that yet, but I interviewed someone called Brett Walser last
Yep,
week,
I
and
watched that one.
yeah, he was a brilliant pianist, and so that's kind of given me ideas. If anybody I interview now has got anything around that they could demonstrate their talents, I'm all ears. But really lovely to hear some of your music at some point. But also, when do you think? I suppose it's yeah, how far off are you from doing your thesis? That probably, where are we now? All
Oh,
right,
it's
so that's going to be up like next summer, right?
oh yeah, definitely. So I'm actually presenting. So it's I got a little sidetracked because I had like a semester off in there post COVID, so it was a little off my track. But so
That's
I've been
fair
working on
enough.
the project, yeah, for like a year or so, and so it's gonna be in January actually. Like that will be when I put it out there. I'm supposed to present on campus actually on December 5th. So we're coming up real fast on that. And then the documentary, like the editing and everything will be done by January.
Okay, so give a presentation on the and the synopsis of it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's just like just an overview of like the science behind it, what I did for the documentary, and how I plan to showcase it, basically. Just a little overview speech, and then the actual final product will come out after that.
Well, I'd love to see if it's possible, if you put it on YouTube or something like that. I don't quite know how you protect your rights to something if you haven't released it. But anyway, it'd be great to, yeah, it's something you'd have to
Yeah, I
think
think
about.
I'll have like a live link for the presentation, but I don't know, time
No,
permitted,
oh,
what
don't
that.
worry about that because that's for your school. I mean, that would be great if you want to. That would be very curious to see that. I just wouldn't want you to feel obliged to do that. I was thinking more about the actual. Well, I'd be very curious because it sounds like a fascinating subject. So that I'll leave that in your court if you'd like to, or if you'd like, or if you're comfortable with doing that, just that's entirely up to you. Then by all means, send me a link to that. Just either way, because I'm sure there'll be other people in this group that would be interested. But equally, if you're not comfortable with doing that, absolutely fine. Wouldn't want to put you on the spot with that. But once you've done I was thinking when you actually present it when it comes out, which is in January, and of course, yeah, there must have been a few setbacks. Quite a few people, especially lots of people in different ways were affected because of the COVID, but especially students. I mean, really, how you manage it's totally fair enough to have. You said you took a semester off, right, over COVID.
Yeah, it was just a crazy time. And I also had some personal things going on that I just kind of said I'm gonna regroup after this semester and get back at it. We went online for about a year and a half, just sitting in my room on the laptop looking at lectures and stuff. And like that's not necessarily a way to learn music and radio and television.
No,
Yeah. So
that's
we actually went online in the class where I was learning how to use the cameras that I'm using for my documentary. So I have had some catch up to play.
That's totally fair enough. I think you've done absolutely brilliantly to as any student that was studying over COVID. It was really quite limiting and quite extreme circumstances. I know that yeah, several students and even also people at school. There's a lot of kind of indoor studying and also a lot of limitations on access and how much you could mix with other students. It was really quite adverse situations in a lot of respects. So I think it sounds brilliant that you've taken you took a little bit of time out and regrouped, and really look forward to at some point, if it's possible, to seeing what you've done. And Jessica, I'd just like to say thank you so much. I think it's fascinating. I mean, if it's possible, but I'll ask you separately, maybe not in this interview, because either way, it's totally, I just want you to feel comfortable around that. But it's a fascinating subject, and you're really inspirational in the fact that you've managed to combine several of what clearly are very different and but also accomplished talents that you have. It's really inspiring to hear all about what you're doing, and I really wish you all the best in the future, and I look forward to hearing your music in the future as well. And you can't, I suppose there are only 12 hours in the day, and hopefully you're not spending absolutely all of them studying. Although I know, as a mature student, I know what it's like when you're getting stuff done.
Happens from time
You
to
kind
time.
of, as you get close to the deadline, you can tend to be spending as many of the 12 hours as you can to get stuff finished. I do, yeah, vaguely remember that process. But yeah, just wish you all the very, very best with it. Sounds fascinating. Did you say? I know people changed. That was that was the document, the first documentary you did, or the first film that you did. So video. So what is this? Do you have a name for this, or a working title?
Yeah, so it's gonna be called Harmony Within.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Cognition. Yep.
Yeah, that's a great title because it's such a therapeutic. Music can be such a therapeutic uh, creative form anyway, and so but particularly as you said, so with helping people with facilitating cognition and improved cognition in very particular ways from what you're saying by the sounds of the research. It sounds really interesting, and I wish you all the very best with it and your music. Thank you so very much for agreeing to have an interview. All right, okay. I mean, it's slightly disappearing. So I had this backdrop on from the last one. I'm like, oh goodness, all right. But it's but I'm interested in you. It doesn't really matter if there's a shoulder disappearing from time to time. Never
Happens.
mind. All right, lovely to meet you, Jessica. All the very best.
Thank you. Nice to meet you as well. Thanks for
All
having me.
right, welcome to the group. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.